Okay, let's go then. Hi everybody, my name is Reto Gadient. I am in the Crypto Valley Association that's located in Zug. I'm very delighted to be here. I'm a bit jealous about these locations you find in Berlin. I have been yesterday with Cassagnes. They are in a fantastic, nice building, and it's so attractive that I met a guy from Switzerland, a very young coder, and I told him, listen, why do you migrate to Berlin? And he didn't say anything because I thought maybe it's the party zone here, whatever, but what he talked about is a very serious project, so I believe that the coding was his main motivation to move into Berlin. Nevertheless, it's very interesting to see what's going on in Zug, etc. Tonight is a meetup with people from Canada who visit this blockchain territory. Tomorrow we will see some people from Korea. So as a matter of fact, blockchain is extremely interesting. And also we see that we are in an evolution. There are so many people, they have no clue. There are so many people, they just struggle and phase one, etc. And it's so important that you guys talk to each other and also share. I think Twitter is allowed here. You can take pictures of these guys. You can post it on your social channels. It's very important that you do it and share. Okay.
Just don't take pictures of the audience right now.
Send the pictures to us, and then we will also resend this in our social network.
Okay, now let's go into the. Okay. Now let's go into the panel discussion. The first question is very important in my view. You should know who these guys are, and you should know a little bit the background so that we better understand why somebody is more in favor of this solution or the other solution. And what I really want to know from everybody, what was your blockchain moment in your life? Because it's a tradition of life, and I had one, but I will share it during the lunchtime if somebody is interested. But let's start now with Cyril.
So, Cyril, I'm the technical lead of Infrachain. So Infrachain is a non-profit organization based in Luxembourg. So we have been created by the Luxembourgish government and the industry around blockchain in Luxembourg. We are now working on promoting blockchain for more than 1 year and a half, like that. And now I have to present to talk about my blockchain moment.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's happened 4 years ago. And I would say that my blockchain moment was not related to crypto at all, but was more the outcome of several missions, maybe in banking sector, insurance sectors, and other financial institutions where people are really struggle to interconnect to each other and to actually have interoperability around the data that they are working for. And all of these people are most of the time working in silo regarding their data. And when finally blockchain took a lot of traction, I'd say, oh, that's it. We finally can break the silo and interconnect those people, create some kind of backbone to share the data across several institutions and move on and use all of this to create value. And I would say that this was my blockchain moment, let's say, July 2 of 2013, if you want a date, a fake date.
Oh, no. Okay, thank you very much. Gilbert, I'm very, maybe you start with your blockchain moment and then say something about yourself.
Okay. Thank you. So Gilbert Verdian, so I founded Quant Network in 2015. And my blockchain moment, so I've been working in cybersecurity for 20 years in government, across a few governments as a CISO, and also within banking and private sector. So I've always been protecting people. So my blockchain moment was in 2000. I've got two actually. I can talk about two. 2009. So I was a CTO at the Treasury in the UK, and the Bitcoin paper came out. And 3 weeks later, as a security person, it was very interesting. I spoke about it at a government conference, And I said, has anyone here heard about Bitcoin? No one knew anything, so 2009. And then I got my policy guys to do a paper, and the Treasury came out and said, this is a toy thing, it will never have any material impact to the UK. And that was 2009, so that was correct. But fast forward to 2015, I was in government, CISO of health, protecting people's health records, and I had a problem with blockchain. And the problem was we're making the mistakes, we're doing blockchain wrong. And so in 2015, everyone was making things in isolation, there was no interoperability, there was no governance. So I founded the ISO standard, TC 307, and I wanted to give government some regulatory governance of blockchain. I wanted industry to create things in collaboration. And now we have 51 countries working together in TC 307, so it's a good outcome.
Fantastic, thank you very much. You have Jesus.
Hi, my name is Jesus Ruiz. You can call me Jesus, by the way. I am the technical leader of Alastria. Alastria is a non-profit organization in Spain, and we are building a public permissioned network. Public permissioned is in the middle between public permissionless, like Bitcoin or Ethereum or many others, and permission networks like private consortiums. Okay, so this is a new kind of thing. And well, I started in technology, in banking technology, in '85. By the way, I was part of the group which put the first personal computer in banking, in a banking network in the world. And then, since that moment, I think the Bitcoin moment or the blockchain moment, okay, was even better than that one. Okay, that came because I was working in Santander. And then in 2013, the end of 2013, we got the mission to study this technology that was going to kill all the banks and all the central authorities on the world. Okay, so we studied that, and then we reached the conclusion that that was fantastic, okay, but for some use cases. But contrary to popular belief, this was really going to help companies and people to better collaborate in a real productive economy, okay? And this is exactly what then we started. And as part of Santander Group, by the way, this is the biggest bank in the Eurozone and top 10, top 15 in the world, and a very decentralized organization, we started analyzing use cases and implementing internally, okay, for the banks around the world, and then with other banks in consortiums like WeTrade. By the way, this is already in production, so permission networks or private consortiums are much more advanced than any other. But then suddenly this public permissioned network of Alastria started, and then I dedicated my efforts completely to this network because this is solving problems, okay? It's a complement to public permissionless and to private consortiums, so all of them are useful, but for us, public permission networks are going to solve problems that will never be solved by public permissionless or private consortiums. And by the way, those problems are, for me, the real problems of the world.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Peter, since we hear you in later on, talk about you as a person, focus on that, okay?
Of course. So my name is Peter Broadhurst. I've been working as an engineer in enterprise middleware for most of my career. I've pretty much done engineering in every layer of that stack, specializing across application servers and core messaging technologies, the ledgers, the individual ledgers that are built up in the core systems of record of all of those large enterprises which are now exploring blockchain. And my blockchain moment was only a year ago, well, a little bit over a year ago now. And it was when I had the opportunity to be there at the start of a project which was Kaleido. And the goal that we came together, a few of us, to achieve was to make the blockchain technology and promise practically useful to those large enterprises that I've been working with all of that time. And actually, personally, the most exciting thing for me was that I'd reached a point as an engineer where I had a very large team. had an opportunity to work with 100 or so engineers trying to go fast in a large, very large technology organization, and moved to the opportunity to genuinely go fast with a small team, being agile every day. And maybe my blockchain moment wasn't the start. Maybe it was when we after just 6 months, we were there, publicly live, partnered with Amazon as one of the most advanced private permissioned managed services for blockchain that's out there on the market. So
Okay.
that's my story.
I would have expected that you talk about more about your weekend experience with the assistant as in a wedding, and I would have asked you, did you use the blockchain? I mean, you could have.
No. There was no blockchain involved, although it was fun. I was in the position of being the brother-in-law of my bride and doing the father of the bride speech. So there was some. It's almost as hard as explaining blockchain to explaining why you're doing the father of the bride speech when you're not much older than the bride.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing that. Ken?
So I am in charge of running the EU Blockchain Observatory and Forum, along with Ludovic and Tom here in the corner. So I'm very honored to be sitting with such talented panelists. In my day job, I'm also responsible for France at Consensus. My blockchain moment has nothing to do with blockchain. Before joining Consensus, I co-founded 2 e-commerce companies. E-commerce is probably the single hardest industry to be in. Customers stay on your site 2 seconds. They never go past the second web page, and they do not read or understand most of the instructions that you give them. And I think for me, that was the blockchain moment, meaning that technology is important, but user adoption is even more important. And in my day job, I strive every day to make that happen in the blockchain space.
So thank you very much for this first round of introductions. What we now go a bit deeper into the topic, scalability, interoperability. Sustainability will follow later, but now I would like to really go into that. And we have heard some things about scalability. I remember Arthur saying consensus algo, network, sharding, and off-chain are the 4 territories. More from a practical point of view, if you look in your business, and we have selected you because you are deep in the business now to solve these solutions. What do you implement? How do you implement and design solutions? And also, what are the specific functionalities that are necessary to really achieve interoperability and scalability? Maybe I can give it to you again.
So the short answer is it depends. And I mean, it was very interesting actually when we talk about the different consensus algorithm, because we always make the assumption that they are all, one is fighting against the others. And in fact, it really depends on the kind of requirements that you have in your business. When we talk about acyclic graph, like hash graph, IOTA, and so on, or Byzantine fault-tolerant algorithms or proof of work, it's really depend of one, the level of trust that you are putting in the nodes, because like Arthur said, if you are using BFT but you are in a permission environment and you know your counterparty, so you know which node who is going to validate, you can make some assumption that you can relax the level of complexity of your consensus algorithm, meaning that you don't need the proof of work necessarily, because you know your counterparty, you know who is processing the consensus algorithm, you can relax the level of trust. Then, depending on the level of throughput and the consistency that you want to achieve with your ledgers, you will also choose an algorithm like BFT or proof of stake or others where you have a strong consistency, where all the nodes need to converge in a short amount of time. If you don't need this level of consistency regarding your transaction that has been stored within your ledgers, then you can use consensus algorithm where you will have more availability, meaning that you will be able to read fastly your blockchain, but you will have no guarantee that the transaction that you are reading is actually the same, let's say, value that is stored somewhere else in the network. You won't have a consistent view of your ledgers across all the nodes. And this is a trade-off between actually the consistency and the availability that you have to decide when you are designing your solutions and when you are building your blockchain use cases.
But I mean, decision-making process, that's something different. We have to talk afterwards. But I mean, just you deal like you be a little bit on the sideline and describe it, but you are in the middle of a process, right? You are in a project, and then you have to make decisions, right?
Yes.
And
for us,
what is the way you're going for? Also, what is exactly what you very special, also very specific?
Yeah, but for us, it depends when we are talking to the financial industry, to the music industry, or other industry. Infrachain is not providing one specific blockchain.
Okay.
Like Ruiz explained,
Yeah.
Our goal is to find the compromise between the public chain, which is not appropriate for financial sector, for healthcare sector, for a lot of sectors who have a strong regulation in place because the regulator is not able to look what is happening and to audit what is going on, with a full private chain. So we provide a community of nodes where consortium who are creating a blockchain application can come and release their application to us. So that's why we are talking about the third-party distributed trust.
Okay.
So we are a shared infrastructures where we can run a blockchain independently from other people, but still we know all the counterparty, all of the people who are involved in our infrastructures. And today it's turned out that we are providing an Ethereum chain as a test environment, but we are not forcing any blockchain technology, because actually the really hot use case that we have are using 3 different blockchains. So one is using something similar to Ethereum, another one is using Appla, and the third one will be using BigchainDB. So we cannot say, okay, let's use this consensus and this blockchain.
Okay, I see. Gilbert, you are CEO of Quant Network. How do you approach this? What are solutions? What are specifications?
Yeah, thank you. So we've done things a bit differently. So we've looked at what happened with the internet. If you remember, 1977, OSI was established to create the OSI stack. But then it failed in '83 because TCP/IP came along, and that was easier to use, more open, and just easy access to the technology. So we're kind of making the same mistakes with blockchain. We're making it difficult for people to use it. And so what we've done is we've learned from that mistake 30 years ago. And so we've created an operating system called Overledger. It sits on top of 6 blockchains now. So we've connected Hyperledger, Ethereum, Ripple, IOTA, Bitcoin, Quorum, and one other one. And so what we've done is we're allowing customers to use all 6 technologies at the same time. But if you want to use one particular blockchain, you can use Ethereum. But if you use it through Overledger, you're able to have more resilience. So you can scale out, you can migrate if there's a cryptographic issue or a legal issue. And so we're giving people choice. And so if you look at what happened with the internet, blockchain is only going to succeed if you have openness, if you have mass adoption, and you have non-proprietary technology. Mm-hmm. We're taking that approach. So you can have applications that work on a fast chain for user authentication, like Red Belly blockchain is a theoretical one that's at a university in Australia. They do 600,000 transactions a second. So we've been experimenting with that. And then you can put your storage part of your application on Bitcoin because it's good for storage. And then you can put, let's just say, your processing bit on Hyperledger. So we're giving our customers choice, so they're not stuck or they're not tied to one technology or one blockchain.
Sounds like a very perfect approach, maybe just very short, okay?
Very short. Yeah, actually, Red Belly is using weak coordinators, which is relaxing a lot BFT.
Okay, sure. Jesus, please.
Yeah, Alastria, as I said, is putting into production a public permission network, and we started looking at the technologies. We want to be technology agnostic, but at the end, if you want to put something in production, at the end you have to select some technology or some technologies. And then, as we started last year, before the summer of last year, the only technology that we found suitable was Quorum, because it was a light fork based on Ethereum, and Ethereum was in production and proving that it was really working. Okay. Right now we are going to start with Fabric to see if we can do that. Okay, together with IBM because it's joining the consortium. But with Quorum, right now we are using the standard BFT algorithm, okay, which you know that has some scalability problems when you talk about the size of nodes and to increase the number of validators. Even though well, right now we are using this standard protocol. We want to go to the mainnet as soon as possible. But we, as in my previous questions, we think that there is a lot of research which should be put into this type of problems, okay? Because most of the efforts are going to how to scale public permissionless networks or how to improve performance of private consortiums, but not in how to scale in the several dimensions of scale for public permission networks. Because as soon as you, to a public permissionless network, you add permissioning, then this is a different animal. Then you can do things that you cannot do on the public anonymous setting. And you can, instead of fight against the legal framework, you can use the existing legal framework to help you scale the whole thing. Suddenly, sharding is easier. Sharding can be done in a very similar way to how the real economic transactions are being handled, okay? Or the collateral problem that we saw, then suddenly it can be made to disappear as soon as you use the existing legal framework. But this is enough. There are many, many things. We are putting a paper, putting what we think should be the research lines, and we are going to align the universities in Spain or any other university to try to research on these areas, because for us, those are the most important things that have to be solved for a public permission network. And we don't see many people with the use case because the problems are different. Okay, so we want to set up what are the problems, what are the requirements, and then hope that people will investigate in this very interesting area.
Okay, thank you very much. Peter, you are co-founder of Kaleido. Maybe can be very specific what technology you use and also how you tackle these issues.
Yeah, certainly. So at Kaleido, we're focused on providing the tools that are practically needed to be productive in getting from the concept all the way through to a real working consortium for a blockchain project. So we've chosen to start with the Ethereum community. Because we believe in technology, community is probably the biggest factor in the long-term adoption of which particular technology is favored in the market. So we started there with the Ethereum community. But beyond that, we provide choice. So we allow you to choose a consensus algorithm between a POA, practical BFT implementation, simple, straightforward leadership election based on Raft. We allow you to choose the protocol provider, whether you would like to use the pure Go Ethereum implementation that's there, running the mainnet, one of the largest that's running the mainnet, or whether you'd like to have the permissioning and other enterprise features that come with an enterprise dedicated chain, such a protocol such as Quorum. But that's kind of not the interesting bits. The interesting bit is we're there to get the technology out of the way, and also to allow the key things that really matter in forming a consortium, which is the organization of the consortium, the onboarding of members into the consortium, to get the kind of bit that everyone seems to get stuck in, which is the technology, out of the way in minutes. And to get on to, well, actually, what are we going to do? What we want to do is we want to build a decentralized new solution to solve a problem that's going to radically change our space. That's what we want to do. We want to get together as a group of organizations, and we need a technology to do it. And it's a shame to see how many of these projects can get stalled in those early phases on the practicalities of doing shared IT across organization for the very first time, where you're not in control of all the technology yourself. So that's probably where we focus most, is actually on helping that shared IT problem across organizations.
Okay, maybe Ken, can you elaborate on the shared idea, open source?
No, I'm not going to speak every single time. I'm more here to bring the perspective of the observatory when needed. I think we've had a lot of great answers already.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So it's the same problem. We have some different approaches, depend a little bit from where you come and also the goals you have. What I really try to go now is a bit. It sounds a bit kind of perfect. I mean, we must know 95% of the blockchain projects fail. That's kind of a fact, and I mean, we take the risk that we are in a business that is pretty tough. I mean, everybody, and that's why I ask you for the moment of the blockchain. What was your moment? And I heard some very rational answers, and I guess there were also some emotional components in there. At least myself, I was very also, it was an emotional moment. And then you start somehow to feel, yeah, maybe it's really the next big thing. Also, you have a déjà vu. You know the internet, how the internet evolved, how much has been faded away. But nevertheless, at least we all here take a lot of risk given this, and we wonder how. I mean, I know you are confident that you are in the 5%, that you will not fail. And I really like to hear from you, what makes you so confident that your initiative, your project will not fail? I mean, you definitely are on the route to improve interoperability, to go for scalability, that's clear. But also from a sustainability point of view, you're on that road. And maybe just to answer the first question is energy. Energy is one of the elements that's very important. Start first with the answer to the question of energy. How do you solve that? And then maybe come with some other arguments why you think your approach is sustainable. Maybe I'm going to start with Peter on that, okay?
Yeah, certainly. Well, my energy every day comes from working with those real consortia that are trying to solve problems every day. Having requirements driven by customers trying to do things. And I also think that I've been tempted, corrupted by the goals of Agile, of lean engineering, that actually listening to the problems that people really have and providing solutions to those problems and reacting to what is the highest problem on a real customer's mind, that's the way that we can be successful and to adapt. So we've started with the chain. At Kaleido, we actually hear all the time from our customers that 80% of the engineering that's done in these projects, these decentralized collaborative consortia, is not the core chain. It's not the core chain. We'll talk a little bit more about that this afternoon. So actually being able to be led by the requirements of where are the real problems and do the engineering there, that's what excites me, and that's what I hope will make us successful.
Maybe you misunderstood a little bit my energy question, but nevertheless it's great to hear that And so I see it also when I do meetups in the Crypto Valley. There is so much energy there. It's just incredible. And I'm really proud to be part of that. And so please use this energy also in your private environment. Really share it, because it's exciting to see what's going on, and we need the energy. What I wanted to ask you is about the energy efficiency of your solutions. I mean, it's one of the critics we always face, you know, this discussion, Bitcoin, yes, everything, energy, other, etc. And what is your answer on that?
Well, being a managed cloud service, I guess we're kind of unique in that that's kind of like the first thing that we think about. What's the maximum density of chains that we can get? We allow anybody to go and just for free create a chain in a few seconds, push a button and have 4 nodes running, 5 nodes running, running a consortium. We have to be efficient about the computing power that's behind that. We only use energy efficient consensus algorithms. We even go to the lengths of where there are tie kickers on the platform, we just simply pause those environments when they're not running. We use we use predictive auto-scaling environments running Dockerized Kubernetes-based deployments in order to pack nodes onto machines and then virtualized networks on top to give complete isolation at a network layer between environments. So I guess we still see the bill every day for the computing that we're running on other people's behalf. So energy is just at the center of what we do.
Okay, fantastic. What is your talk about or quote about energy? Well, Precious.
Being a public permissioned network, we don't have to use proof of work or anything like that. So we are using right now, and I think forever will use whatever implementation of BFT protocols, which are much more efficient than any of the other protocols that can be used in permissionless networks. The protocols, most BFT protocols are not compute intensive, or better said, in the computing side, it's just digital signature verification, okay? And then there are the complexity is on the messaging, because it grows with the square of the number of nodes, okay? But there are some implementations which are going to implement some common mode algorithms and so on, and falling back and so on, and they are going to improve this. So in the end, I think that in order to implement such a network, BFT protocols, I don't have the numbers, but are going to be even more efficient than centralized computing. Okay, so more efficient, of course, than public permissionless networks, and more efficient than the centralized computer. This is sustainable.
Fantastic, thank you. Gilbert?
Can I answer 2 questions? So I think blockchain needs a lot of evolution. It's currently still in its immature state, and if you look at technology as it matures, the first and second generations fail. So it's usually the 3rd and the 4th generations of technology that stays, and that's in everything, in industry, automotive, cars, internet, whatever. It's just the trend. So I think there's a lot of blockchains that are going to fail, and if we have 30 today and there's another 300 next year, it's the evolution of those are the ones that are going to stay. So my view is humans are quite creative, we're quite innovative, and we will solve energy problems. I mean, Bitcoin takes 1 day of processing of equal to all of Iceland's electricity for the day. But as Arthur said in his talk, we can start looking at the stack and making it as optimal, as efficient as possible. So the evolution of these are going to use less energy, which is a good thing. So our approach within Quant is we kind of are not fussed. We're agnostic. So whatever blockchain underneath you use, it's up to the customer. It's their choice. But what we actually allow them to do is understand and broker the most efficient cost for them to run blockchain. So if it's costing them 10,000 euro a day on Ethereum and they want to reduce that to 5,000, they can move the next day into Hyperledger and reduce the cost, and then kind of migrate as the cost of gas increases. So we allow you to have the choice to manage your cost based on your energy use and your compute use as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And to your side, the first maybe energy, how do you solve that?
Yeah, but clearly there is a clear drawback for proof of works. So we try to advise that in a permission environment, we should use another kind of consensus algorithm. Besides that, I would say that for me, this is a problem that we should address at the hardware level. I mean, processors are generating it, whatever we are doing with it. So let's build smarter data center. There is also high performance computing, which is a quite of a strategic technology for Europe. I mean, we need just to build smart data center. Already in France, we have a company who is building heater to heat swimming pools, to heat schools. We can have nightclubs using this energy. I mean, processors are creating heat. Just we have to use it.
Sure. Yeah. Maybe I add here one personal note on that side. I mean, the first time when somebody came up with Ethereum, etc., and I asked him, shall I invest? Yes or no? And said, oh, of course. But you know, it's an experiment. And then I said, okay, shall I invest now? Because for me, it's not an experiment. I invest money. And then it's like a little bit, I mean, if you make a decision like you marry somebody or etc., it's not an experiment. It's just real life. But maybe you have to accept maybe that it's early stage. And you came up a little bit with some excuses already. It's early stage, it can fail, of course, and everybody knows that it can fail. But we have to be clear that we make the decision and we do as good as possible, as serious as possible, and maybe we have at this stage the right to be inefficient. Kind of, I don't know, maybe this could be a discussion for afterwards, but before we go in the open discussion, let me go now to the last round of question. I mean, I am, as some of you, a corporate guy. I spent more than 20 years in a big corporation. And for me, experience might be quite a hurdle. Because when you experience a corporate situation, then you have so many people, they think on behalf of you. I mean, you have the legal guys, you have etc. They just have a paper for you and they have to stick to that. But when you are now suddenly in a situation where you have to make your own decisions, nobody's here, no regulator, no nothing, you just have to find the navigation, etc. Then you think also about governance issues in any case. But they are definitely somehow different than to before. So what I really like from you, have kind of, is there kind of a gold standard of governance you could promote in a blockchain-based ecosystem? Yeah.
Yes, so actually this is a very important question for Infrachain. Because indeed, when we first create the association and then the community, we say, okay, how can we interact each other? Should we become a consortium with all the implication of what a consortium is, non-disclosure agreement, and so on? And we say, okay, but if we do that, we are going to select one technology, and we don't want that. We want everybody to be some kind of a peer-to-peer network. And then we say, okay, so let's build a governance around that. And for more than 1 year now, we are building this governance, and we finally have an outcome after discussion with lawyers, with people from a compliance department, from bank, insurance, or other kind of company. So we define all the skeleton on how the governance should be, with a community dedicated to some task to advise the general assembly of the association, or the board of directors of the association. And I would say that we are close to a gold standard. I can take this, I can say this. So for us it's very important, because it's clearly what is framing all of the interaction of our community, and this is also our main point, our main differentiators between companies who are more monolithic in terms of blockchain deployment, even if they ease the provisioning of the blockchain, the deployment of nodes and so on, things that we are struggle to do. Our added value is clearly that we have a community of host operators, so it's not dependent from one company. It's clearly
Okay.
pool of companies.
What is your gold standard?
Yeah, governance is quite tough. I mean, we've seen it quite a few times within the blockchain world, but also in the corporate world within governments as well. So, you know, the term of what happened with Tezos comes to mind, and you know, the issues there. Also with Ethereum, I mean, the fork that happened, who got to decide how to do it, and was there real governance, or was it just a few people? So you really have to be quite careful when you're working within this new decentralized world, because governance can't be seen to be centralized. It's kind of an opposite of what we're trying to achieve. But I mean, personally, from our company's perspective, we're doing things open source. So we're allowing the community to connect different blockchains that are not connected. We're giving them choice. We're allowing enterprise to use what's open and what's available to them. So we're kind of community driven. But on the higher level, at the ISO level, so we actually do have a whole governance stream within the ISO standard that is being developed. So the goal is to have the ISO standard published in 2020, 2021. It takes 10 years for a standard, but we've pushed for 3 years to get it out as quickly as possible, because that's what the market wants. So we're looking to create a standard of what governance should look like for people to follow. So everyone who's developing technology or implementing technology can be compliant to that internationally. But it's not a very prescriptive way to. It's just saying you should have the right governance in place, but it's up to people to decide what the right type of governance is. So it's not forced governance.
Okay. How does it look like with you, Jesus?
Well, Alastria has right now 300 entities and growing at a rate of 20 per month. Okay, so this is first. Second, experience can be a problem, but experience can be your competitive advantage depending on your experience. And if you mix experiences like in a setting like Alastria, then the results are amazing. And by the way, I have to say that the people are incredible cooperating in Alastria, but not only from, because we have 300 associates from big companies, small and medium, universities, lawyers from almost every sector. Okay, so this is an incredible mix, which is the boiling thing for good things. But even from big companies, I have to say that, for example, BBVA, which is there, which is considered, by the way, the most innovative bank in the US, okay, by the US sources and so on. So the people from the big corporations which are there have lots of experience in many different settings, and they are amazing. And then startups, and then other companies, and technology companies, and lawyers, and so on. So I would say that the mix of experiences in Alastria is so incredible that, come on, we cannot fail. It's impossible. Because at the end, this is not a company. This is an association for setting a national blockchain network. At the end, it will be done with this technology, with another technology, with whatever technology. This is going to be implemented.
Okay. Maybe Peter?
So I guess there's two types of governance that are very dear to my heart. The first I'll get a bit of a chance to talk about later, which is kind of the journey that we see customers going on to try and achieve the kinds of adoption that Jesus was talking about there. But the other governance that really affects us is the governance of the communities that are trying to build and evolve the technology that's emerging so fast. It's in its early stages. And the reality is now that from a technology perspective, the world's moved from a standard gets set and then everybody goes and implements it, to a standard evolves out of the implementations that exist and the experience of adoption. So the really exciting thing for me was to hear that the two standards bodies that we work most closely with announced yesterday that the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance and the Hyperledger Foundation were going to have this joint associate membership together yesterday. So one organization that's been very focused on capturing real-world experience and turning it into standards in the EEA, joining forces with one which is really about software governance and leading through code, coming together. That for me is really an exciting start of what I think from a technology perspective is a really exciting form of governance.
So maybe one last comment, which is, I think from the standpoint of the observatory, we really try to challenge the views of the community and the experts and look at measures of success. And I think from our standpoint, what will define the success or the failure of a governance is not whether it's nice on paper, it's whether it can deliver 1 million transactions a day. No project that I know of right now in the permission space has yet delivered this kind of volume. I think a few projects like Alastria, like Congo in Switzerland, like Liquidshare in France are on their way to deliver that, but until they do, it's very early stage and very difficult to define in principle what is the right governance to target.
Yeah, sorry, I have a question. How the governance can deliver what million of transactions?
No, the governance, the difference, what I'm saying is that the difference between the success of a project and the failure of a project is the volumes, the user adoption that it is able to deliver, and then the success of the governance in turn is determined by the success of the project.
Yeah, I would say that this is correct. I mean, for us, the objective is 1 million or more transactions per second, because if you want the whole economy of Spain, you need that, okay?
Per day.
Sorry?
Per day. 1 million, I was saying 1 million per day.
Yes, that's not enough, okay? But in any case, we are very far from this. And by the way, this, for us, can only be achieved with technology plus governance. Because the governance and putting the legal framework working together with the technology is the only way to achieve this.
No, of course, but there is also one more precision, two levels of governance that we consider. There is a level of governance at the blockchain level, on the people who are building their blockchain. So it could be 15 company building a blockchain, so you have to manage all the life cycle of the application, updates and so on, daily operation. And you have the governance at the level of Infrachain is working on, which is the community who will be running the infrastructures and hosting the blockchain itself. So that's why I didn't precise that point, but it's a very important point also.
Absolutely. I mean, that's something I learned now is there are quite very old forms of corporate governance that come to life again, or there are pretty new ones like decentralized, autonomous organizations, whatever, that may fly or I mean, self-governance, for instance, is also a tagline that could be applied. Maybe you can try to figure out a little bit on that and explain in what direction you are going in your journey. Is somebody who wants to add more specific? Also,
I mean, and I agree with you that governance is a world which is in reality a composition of many layers and so on. But oversimplifying, we are developing something which implements some on-chain governance plus off-chain governance. Okay, just simplifying. They have to be tied together. On-chain governance is to help implementing or automating off-chain governance. But right now, we don't see, maybe in the future, but we don't see a completely on-chain governance for the whole thing. Because at the end, this is permissioned. Okay?
Okay, sure.
Yeah, it's the same for us.
Yeah, maybe I can add, I mean, the whole purpose of governance is to manage risk. And so if you look at it from a corporate perspective or technology perspective, you're managing technical risk.
So well, maybe you have to be very specific on the risk. There are different risk territories. So I guess one of the risks is that you just bypassed by the competitor who have a different, better and even more efficient solution, for instance. That is also a risk. Huh?
Yeah, so I think you need a multi-layered approach to governance. So you're managing your technological risk, your operational risk, your corporate risk, and then your regulatory risk. So all those things are different in terms of the way the governance is structured. So yeah, I think we need to address all.
Okay, I think now is the moment to open the discussion. I'm sure there are some questions, and maybe you have not seen that we have on the left and on the right some walls. there are some people, they do not want to raise a question publicly. Maybe write it down. We have some post-it left and right. Just put it in there so that we do not forget to answer these questions. Or maybe you have also a nice quote you want to share, and maybe it's better to have it on a post-it than rather in this here. But let me give you the microphone.
Got one. I've got one.
Oh, you already won. Okay, perfect.
Stolen.
What's your name, please? And
yeah, Michael from Logos. We're based in Brussels. Just a bit of context, we work with many industries relating to public policy and also standardization. So I'm a bit curious on your thoughts on how you see the role of traditional standard setting bodies and how it relates to implementation-driven standard setting, and how this can help facilitate better cross-sector and inter-consortia operability. So how that's actually going to support the larger scale adoption across different industries, and what do you kind of want to see from regulators in this space? Yeah.
maybe you ask one specific question to who should answer one.
Yeah, I think he's best.
Okay, Gilbert, maybe. Okay.
All right, good question. So the way the standards work with ISO, it is all voluntary. So we can actually create a standard and no one can use it, but we hope that won't happen. But the approach to develop the standard is quite communal. It's very collaborative, and you do it through your mirror committees in each country. So in the UK, we have government, academia, startups, one person, advisors, anyone else. IBM is in it, Microsoft are in it, they're all part of it. So every country has their own experts which join, and those experts come to the standards meetings every 6 months. We're in Moscow in a couple of weeks, and we jointly decide what should happen. So there really isn't an option to hijack the meeting or put something in that's very specific to a particular company. It's kind of international and open, and the way you do it is quite collaborative. So that helps set government policy, because coming from government, we would say if you want to use blockchain, it has to comply to the ISO standard, and that's kind of the policy that will eventually happen. It's not going to say if you use blockchain you have to use a particular color or version or whatever. It's not going to go that level, but it's going to be higher.
Okay, thank you.
Let me answer this again also, because I'm part of the ISO, but the Spanish thing, the UNE, okay, standard organization, and representing Alastria and so on, and driving this. So I think that standards are very, very important. Now, there is one problem here, okay, because we don't really know exactly what to standardize of a technology which is emerging and going so fast, and so it's not going to be easy, but this is very, very important, okay? Because at the end, we want interoperability at different layers. For example, we are implementing a self-sovereign identity system, okay, with legal validity in Spain, and we don't want to reinvent the wheel, of course, okay? We would like this to be already standardized and then implement the standard, but the standard is not there, so what do we do? Do we stop? Do we... so at the end, it's going to be an exercise of iterations, which is a problem with the standards, okay? But they are very, very important for the future.
And I guess on the technical side, being very embedded with the EEA, this quandary comes up all the time. When you have an open source community that's community-led, implementation-led, how does that fall back into standards, and where does it make sense? We have had some really big successes in the Ethereum community around standards. Just having this JSON RPC interface, the boundary of a node be standardized quite loosely with lots of variations has been enough to allow lots of different underlying technologies to thrive. And then there are some evolving places where there's lots of implementations, where discussion on standards are really helping, such as zero knowledge proofs or consensus algorithms, or actually the core permissioning layers that might sit on top of the public networks, to get some sort of discussion and standardization going on those is really helping building trust with enterprise. Because when something's just an evolving technology, enterprises will adopt it as a POC, they will bring it to a pilot. When you get to real production and large volumes, there's an expectation that there's going to be at least a train of standardization happening.
if I may intervene as well in that discussion, Benoît Blos from the European Commission, because standards adoption is one of the things we want to push from a policy perspective. And I would like to reinforce what Gilbert has said. Standards adoption is voluntary, but at the same time, at the Commission, the way we see to push for standards adoption is to adopt standards in public procurement. Public authorities are big purchasers of technologies, and we would like them to even be bigger purchasers. And if we already have all those big purchasers specifying their calls by using standards, then it's going really to drive standards adoption.
Hi, I'm Mirko De Magde from Linkeos, Italy. I have one comment, one remark, and one question for you. Might sound a bit naive, but I still want to make it. First, a remark. Given the discussion we're making today, I'm still reinforcing the belief that the blockchain deployment, in a way, has been damaged by the speculation, economic speculation, have been going on in the past 5 to 7 years, because somehow I feel like the technology and implementation would have been benefited from staying in a stealth mode, and not rather being kind of this discussion over speculation and possible immediate economic gain. And also because somebody says we are like in the internet in 1996, and actually we are in the internet back in possibly 1970. And so from the technological standpoint, and we as the blockchain technology as a service still has to have its TCP IP moment, then the HTTPS moment, and then the email moment still have to come. So my question is, if the parallelism with the internet is still variable, and if we still think of blockchain as an internet of value, when it will become possible to, in your opinion, that, okay, I have an email application or whatever other application I want to run over the blockchain, and I want to make sure that simply a transaction go through, even whether it is a payment or whether it's exchange of value or whether it's just a registration of something, or if I want a smart contract, business logic, not a specific smart contract, but a business logic to go through in the blockchain system. And I don't care what is the provider of this service. I just want it to go through. When this moment will arrive, and you think it will be coming thanks to discussion like this about standards and about interoperability, or rather from a killer application like email, people will start using it, and then the technology will be ready to accommodate the user needs. Because at the end of the day, forget about the technology, it's about use cases, it's about application. And I feel like now it's like of duplication of blockchains every time we have a new application. So blockchain stack attached to end user application, which makes no sense. You need a network of blockchain which makes sure that identity is dealt with, scalability is dealt with, whatever it's the technical need, and then you have an ecosystem of application that runs irrespectively of whatever happens at the technological stack. So when you think this moment will arrive, if...
So I'm not sure that I would agree with your characterization, and both of them actually. Firstly, I think that there's a history that suggests that some degree of exuberance is necessary for innovation. It has been the case for the internet, for artificial intelligence, for driverless cars, and now for blockchain. Without money, it's very hard to make things happen. And so there needs to be a certain heightened expectations for entrepreneurs to get funded. Second, on your second comment, I think that many of the people in this panel would agree that we are already at a stage where blockchain applications are live. Liquid Share will run a stock exchange in France, sponsored by 9 financial institutions by the end of this year. Comgo, a trade finance consortium, will issue its first letter of credit by the end of the year. And so I think the question that we are struggling with is more the scalability of the solutions, so high transaction throughputs, rather than just moving live.
If I may, but why I agree with you is that the technology should be pushed by the business requirement. And this is actually the case at European level, because like the self-sovereign identity, we have EIDAS, which is supposed to actually provide a common ground for identity across Europe. So for this, you will need an operational technology to make this happen. And this, for example, make a blockchain a relevant technology for that. If you take PSD2, so the new payment service directive, it's the same. It's meant to ease the payment system. So again, if we are working at a European level, across country, still blockchain become a relevant technology for that. And same with healthcare. If we want to be able to share health data across Europe, we need uniformization. So for me, the business justification is here. And I agree that sometime in the argumentation, we lose this aspect. We just jump in the blockchain technology, scalability, and interoperability problem. But there is a business demand, I would say, and that's why it's...
just to make sure, I'm quite sure that there is a business. I myself, I started thinking about blockchain when it comes to healthcare data exchange. So I'm aware of that. And also I'm aware that there are a number of successful pilots that are coming to even scale application and scale adoption. The point is we are not, I feel like, at the moment where people don't really care at all about what blockchain is providing me this service. I just use the end user application. This is what my personal concern here.
So one thing I would say is that while I think there are actually a huge number of projects that are still in stealth mode, and actually one of the key aspects of all of these projects are that they're trying to create a seismic shift in the way that a particular industry does business that's been it's kind of astonishing in some cases how archaic the processes are that are in place today. And the publicity is giving the opportunity to really invest in building these consortia of business around a common goal of using new technology to solve these big problems. Now, is the technology there today between permission networks? Is it there today in public networks to just magically solve those? No, it's not. But actually forming these consortia of real enterprises to get together to solve the problems is a process in itself that takes a number of years. And actually having a number of them that really are starting to get together, I think is the promise that whether it's some version of Ethereum 2.0 or whether it's permission chains or whether it's some huge network of lots of individual public chains, that actually the drive from the business side is there to really change some of these archaic processes.
Let me very short. Well, short answer is I have no idea, but let me qualify this, okay? Because you have to talk about the three different types of networks, okay? Public permissionless, Ethereum, public Ethereum, and so on. Public permissioned, okay? And then private consortiums. Now, on the private consortiums, you already are starting to see networks in production, okay, which is just consortiums among companies, and at the end, for example, and I will not make any propaganda, there are some small and medium enterprises which can use the services provided by this consortium without having to enter into the blockchain. So at the end, there are services provided hiding the blockchain complexity from these companies because they don't want to know about this or enter into these complexities. But then the service is much more efficient, cheaper, better, or even a service that could not be implemented before. You are going to start to see these type of things in production. Now, on the public permissionless, because they are trustless, normally this implies that you, as a citizen, don't trust on anybody. So you have to participate as a first-hand citizen. Those applications are going to be hard to implement in a very inclusive way. So you have millions of people, normal people like my mother, using this directly. It's going to be hard. Now, on the public permission networks, like Alastria, our objective is to have this as soon as possible. But again, the first interaction would be companies in the whole of Spain, okay, providing services directly to the citizens, and the citizens will not have to participate directly. They will have to trust the company that they choose, their banks, their companies, the telcos, the consortium, and so on. Okay? We expect to have on the next year some interesting use cases on this. Now, in order to generalize the whole thing, many things have to happen. But again, it's easier with private consortiums, because they implement whatever. Then public permission is harder but it is much harder in the public trustless systems. But they will come, okay? And I think in this sequence.
Okay,
Yeah. I think we're going to have our internet moment in the next 3 years because we're ramping up and the technology is increasing. So to me, it makes sense that we'll have two coexisting internets, one for internet for transacting information and one internet for transacting value. And for me, success is when like our mothers or family who use a transaction and it uses a blockchain network, they don't know and they shouldn't know. And we're getting there. So I think we're nearly there. And if you remember the internet, it only was opened up in '92. Up until '92, it was a research-only network, and then World Wide Web happened in '94, and all the killer applications came out. So I think email was the first one, '92 when it was opened up. People started emailing each other very quickly, and that was amazing. And then World Wide Web happened a couple of years later. So I think in the next 3 years, we'll have our internet moment, and then after that, we'll have those killer applications that everyone will use without knowing it's a blockchain, which is great.
Cyril?
Yeah, and to add on this discussion and to share my opinion, and I would like your opinion on this, is because we make a lot of parallel with internet and so on, but for me there is two things to clearly separate. There is people who want to create services, company who want to eat the market. And this I can understand completely. Like for internet, I have these new innovative services, I want to make money out of it. This is great, we need this, but we need the internet. So we need the common ground to deploy and have a trusted environment to run blockchains. Because without the internet, without this stack of nice protocol and socket and TCP/IP, no services, no innovation, no market. And this is my point. I understand that today companies already see how I'm going to sell my new services and make money with this and this customer. This is great, but we shouldn't lose track that we need first to run this blockchain in a trusted environment. So I don't know if a private permission or what is the best model, and we are here to talk about, but we need this common ground at the European level to say to your European market, you can run your blockchain. This is here for you to make money out of it, because the innovation will be on the services, not on the platform. So.
Okay, any more questions? Yeah.
A totally different question. On finality, it's something pushed by some chains as very important, typically for interoperability, to allow transaction between chains. Some chains are not very interested. Do you have any take on this? On finality, transaction finality, and fast transaction finality?
Yeah, we are, as soon as you are permissioned, and again, I go with my book, okay? Public permissioned, BFT. BFT has transaction finality, point.
And
we don't use...
sorry, that was too quick.
Okay. BFT protocols have many characteristics which are interesting. One is transaction finality, okay? Because at the end, when the block is already in the blockchain, there is no mining, okay? When the block is, the consensus says the block is in the blockchain, the block is valid. And by the way, this is the point in time where legally is valid, and that's it.
Okay, so let me rephrase your answer. You're saying that you don't have any concern about the choice of the protocols, consensus protocols. It's already decided. It's IBFT or BFT. So then you've got finality. So for example, for one of the points that was mentioned by Arthur previously, which was, we've got the choice between 20 consensus protocols. You're saying, I don't need to choose. I've got mine, and it's a great one, and it's decided.
No, what I'm saying is that there are many different, the previous lectures mentioned an article which is the next 700 BFT protocols, okay? So BFT is a family of protocols, okay? So we are using one right now, but we expect that the research is going to implement, but the whole family of BFT protocols, by its nature, is transaction finality. So
I think I will just rephrase the question, and if I understand the question well, your question is, do we consider that transaction finality is an absolute requirement? And if we are going to choose any consensus that allows us to scale, should we consider that transaction finality is the first, a criteria that needs to apply to any of those choices? Am I rephrasing your question correctly?
That's okay.
Okay, so let me answer. Then, in general, you cannot say one size fits all. But for the use cases that we are solving, yes, transaction finality for economic transactions is a requirement, a major requirement, okay? It's because we want to enforce legality of this and then not having these problems. So then, what we are then going to implement is whatever algorithm better implements the BFT, let's say, paradigm, okay?
But I think it just depends on the use case. I mean, if you want to have a transaction that needs validation, yes. But if you don't, if all you want is a distributed storage, then you don't need any transaction finality or any algorithm. You just use it as a peer-to-peer storage network. So it really depends on your use case.
Yeah, completely.
And I guess we offer the choice. And it is most common for customers to look and say, when they're actually making the final analysis, to say, finality just makes my world so much simpler. It's, I'm having to learn how to completely transform my business and technology stack. If every engineer needs to be able to understand a very long-lived, eventually consistent system, it's going to be really hard for us all to get together and agree on a solution. And it being achievable inside of a permission network means that it's the most common choice for us when people get to the point of really going live with something.
Okay, are there any more questions from the public? Then I have my last question to you. We have seen quite good examples in the future already. Also, look in the future. That's a great job from your side. Thank you. You have stolen one, my reserve one, but there's another one to you. We have said something, and you started with the discussion, a kind of déjà vu. I mean, we always try to understand from our past experience, can we apply this déjà vu, meaning internet? What do you think you can learn from the past? Either internet, our internet experience, and what is completely different? That would be also quite a nice question. Who wants to start? It's open.
Can I do a quick comment?
Sure,
yeah.
sure.
I think for me, the learning was OSI. And if you look at how OSI was developed, it was 6 years of committees and meetings, and access to it was very difficult. It was hard to implement because the technology was extremely complex, and the stack was, 7 layers and just really difficult. And you had to constantly pay to get access to OSI. So it was never adopted, and that's why it failed, because it was hard to get access to it, hard to implement, very costly, and it was proprietary. So I think if we learn from that and not make those mistakes, we'll be in a very good place.
That's user experience, isn't it? That's
Absolutely.
user experience.
Adoption of users.
Do we have it here somewhere? We should add this, in my view. Because I never forget when Andreas Antonopoulos, I asked him, what is the biggest hurdle, you think, in the Bitcoin space? And he didn't say anything about regulatory. He didn't say anything about technology. He said user experience. And to be honest, I must say, yes, user experience is definitely one of the key elements. So.
Yeah.
But I do not want to open up, yeah, Peter?
Yeah, I guess I'd echo that sort of easy button to get going, and that's because I think the thing to recognise is that the real innovation hasn't happened yet. The existence of the internet wasn't the moment that the internet became real for everybody. It was the innovation that happened once it became consumable and it became easy for people to use, which, that's kind of what excites me about what we're doing, is just trying to make it trivial to get going, to the point that you can start innovating, creating your idea, creating your POC, sharing it, and going, well, hey, look, this is something new. So I have no idea what it's going to be, but I'm excited to learn what that innovation is going to be in the future.
And regarding the internet, this is very, very interesting because there are some similarities, okay? But there's something which for me is very different, because in the internet, you had first the platform, the infrastructure was already there with email and that's it, with no use cases. And then use cases started to appear after the internet was there. But in the blockchain space, we have many, many use cases which cannot be really implemented because the platform is not there. It's not there. And that was one of the reasons for setting Alastria. you have a lot of ideas which cannot be implemented in the current technology because scalability, privacy, whatever. So the platform does not yet exist, and they are waiting for the platform. Okay, so this is a different thing. Because the platform does not exist yet, there are many things which we don't know. So we can draw from experience, but for example, Alastria being a public permission network, so at the governance level, we want to be as public as possible, like decentralized, like trustless, okay? But at the technical level, we are more similar to the private consortiums, and we are trying to get the best of both worlds. We may get the worst of both worlds, but okay, we are trying to avoid this, okay? And then, on the technical level, we think that, okay, it's not there, but we have a lot of experience, okay, on the technology, but at the governance level, this is the Wild West right now. We literally don't really know how to make the governance of this permission network but public in such a way that this is not owned by banks or telcos or a single set of companies, because this should belong to the whole country. Okay? So this is a very difficult problem to solve, and we are trying to solve it.
So I think the main difference between the blockchain and the internet is that the internet exists. And I think that it's changing everything. What I mean by that is when the internet got created, there was not nearly the fluidity and richness in communication that is possible now. And for most of us, accessing the internet meant using Microsoft browser or Netscape, and then using the portal of our telco provider as the first gateway to the internet. Those relatively few access points made it possible for the foundations and consortiums to define standards in terms of what the internet should look like. And I think that those relatively few access points do not exist anymore. That's great. It makes innovation a lot richer. But I think that also the parallel, it is very hard to draw a parallel and expect that standards and norms will happen in the same way now as they did 20 years ago.
If I can add something.
Just some words from your side, and then Ludovic, would you take over?
Yes, go ahead. We have one last question that was raised a few minutes ago that we'll be answering quickly, and so please go ahead.
Okay, it's two sentences, but I mean, for me, it's more related to the Internet of Things, and where the standardization process will clearly help will be to provide referential architectures of the thing and a set of protocols. Like in IoT, we see all the protocols, message passing that can be used, and I would say it would probably be the same on blockchain.
Can I add one last comment? Sorry. A lawyer told me this, which I didn't understand, but it blew me away. But the internet's limitation only accounts for 10% of global trade. Because the internet, that's all it can do. And if you look at what the other 90% of trade happens, is what blockchain can do. So what's coming is going to dwarf the internet, because it solves so much more problems, so much more use cases.
Yeah, maybe one last question. I'm Chris from Royalty Range. Not a technical one at all, practical one, regarding the name of a technology. So I see in technical setups, blockchain is used as the name, but in some other instances, in regulatory, DLT is used. So it's a bit broader, I think. So do you ever use DLT as the name for products or offerings, or and what name will be selected as in the future?
So I will first answer for the observatory, because it's a question, as to why we're called the EU Blockchain Observatory. And so the short answer is we don't really want to make a choice. For me, when I try to explain to people in the street, what is my job, they don't even, they don't really know what blockchain is. They know even less what a DLT is. And so usually I just say, I work in cryptocurrencies. So I think we're just going for now for the name that is the most easily recognizable by the public and the business executives. And we're not trying to be too normative in terms of how it should be called.
Yeah, but at the ISO level, we are defining terminology. So every word that's being used, everyone's agreed what's the meaning of that word. So if it's DLT or blockchain or something else, at least everyone agrees what it is.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a lot of opportunity during lunch to have some questions. I really thank you, Cyril, Cassagnes, Gilbert Verdian, Jesus Ruiz, and Peter Broadhurst, and Ken Timsit for this really great panel, and also you guys for these great questions. And I expect in the afternoon that the activity level goes then to your side. We'll do some workshops, etc. But before that, thank you, Ludovic, you inform about the next steps.
Yeah, sure. But first, I think our panelists and the public deserves a round of applause, as this was a very interesting discussion.